The sound of splintering wood had a way of crawling under my skin, even after all these years. You don't forget that kind of sound. The groan of something you built with your own hands, giving way under someone else's arrogance. When Karen's white SUV rammed through my gate that morning, it wasn't just the wood that cracked. It was the last thread of patience I had for Pine Hollow and its self-proclaimed queen. The dust hadn't even settled before I saw the shimmer of her sunglasses through the windshield. She didn't slow down. She didn't even look my way. She just pressed that gas pedal like she was gliding through a shopping mall parking lot, leaving behind the shattered remains of what separated my land from theirs. I watched her go, jaw locked, coffee cooling in my hand, and thought, so this is what freedom looks like under an HOA. You've got to understand, I didn't move out here to fight. I moved out here to breathe. 30 years in construction will make you crave quiet. After decades of noise, of orders barked over power tools and the rattle of trucks on concrete, I just wanted open space. When I bought the ranch, it was meant to be a sanctuary. Wide skies, honest work, mornings that smelled like dew and cedar. What I got instead was a front row seat to the HOA circus across the fence. Pine Hollow wasn't just any subdivision. It was a kingdom run by Karen and her clipboard brigade, all smiles at first, the kind that hide teeth. They came to welcome me, pamphlets in hand, telling me all about the community standards. No unapproved fencing. No livestock without board consent. Even my mailbox had to match the aesthetic. I laughed then. I thought they were joking. They weren't. Karen was their queen bee, always in some pastel cardigan, driving that blinding white SUV like a badge of honor. Her husband, the HOA president, wore polos and a permanent frown. I didn't see much of him, though. It was Karen who made sure everyone followed the rules. If a kid's basketball hoop leaned too far into the street, she knew. If someone's grass grew a half-inch too high, she noticed. The woman treated the neighborhood like a chessboard, and everyone else were her pawns. But what she didn't seem to grasp was that my ranch wasn't part of her little board. It sat on county land, just outside the HOA boundary. That gate she kept driving through wasn't hers. That road she used as her shortcut wasn't community property. It was mine, paid for, fenced, and posted with a sign big enough to be seen from space. Private access. No entry. The first time she drove through, I thought it was an honest mistake. Maybe her GPS got confused, or she was trying to avoid the morning traffic. I waved her down, told her politely this wasn't a public road. She smiled, the kind of smile that pretends to listen while already dismissing you. "Oh, it's just faster this way," she said, rolling her window up before I could finish. Dust hit my boots as she drove off. The second time, I waited for her. Same time, same morning routine. She didn't even slow down, just honked like I was in her way. By the third time, I realized this wasn't confusion. It was conquest. She wasn't driving through because she had to. She was doing it because she could. And that's when the idea of a trap started forming. Not one made of nails or wires, nothing like that. No, what I had in mind was quieter, smarter. The kind of lesson that sticks without leaving a mark. I started watching. Every morning, same route, same time, 7:15 sharp. She'd leave Pine Hollow's eastern gate, cut across my ranch road, and exit onto County Route 9. Shaved off about 3 minutes of her commute, maybe less. I kept notes, just like I used to on job sites. Dates, times, details. After a week, I knew her pattern better than she did. I could have blocked the road again, maybe even replaced the gate with steel. But that wasn't the point. Karen needed to feel what it meant to cross a line that didn't belong to her. I wanted her to understand, in that HOA perfect world of hers, that she didn't get to make every rule. So I started preparing. It began with cameras. Not the fancy kind, just old trail cams I used to track deer. I placed them along the fence posts, tucked beneath brush, aimed right at the gate. Every day I'd check the footage, sipping my coffee while the sun came up. There she was, like clockwork, sunglasses glinting, phone to her ear, cutting through my land like it was nothing. I never saw a hint of hesitation, not even guilt. The more I watched, the more I realized this wasn't about convenience for her. It was about control. Karen didn't like being told no. It was that simple. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. Timestamps, license plate, footage, even her audio when she answered calls with that chirpy, "Hi, Marcia." Yes, I'm on my way. I uploaded it all, quietly, into a file named Queen of Pine Hollow DEMP4, but I didn't plan to post it. Not yet. The real plan was still forming, piece by piece. You see, when you've spent decades on construction sites, you learn a few things about pressure, how to redirect it, how to make structures bend before they break. The trick is patience. Next came the paperwork. Karen loved paperwork, forms, bylaws, citations. So I drafted a few of my own. I wrote up an access agreement under County Property Code, complete with penalties for unauthorized use and references to trespassing statutes. Nothing illegal, just precise enough to sound official. Then I printed copies, stamped them with a seal I'd kept from my old company, and mailed them to the Pine Hollow HOA office, addressed to the board. That's when the fun began. Because in an HOA, for 3 blessed mornings, peace returned to my land. No crunch of gravel, no screech of tires, no plume of dust rolling across my pasture. I let myself believe it was over, that maybe the message had landed. But if there's one thing I've learned about people like Karen, it's that silence isn't surrender. It's plotting. On the 4th morning, I found proof. My gate hadn't been hit this time, and it had been opened. The lock hung loose, bolt snipped clean, chain tossed aside like a discarded snake. The tracks told the story clear as day. That same SUV, same tires, same arrogance, cutting across the road before dawn. She hadn't just driven through. She'd come early to make sure I didn't see her do it. The gall almost made me laugh. She thought this was some kind of game. Her little suburban rebellion. What she didn't realize was that I'd been playing games like this long before she learned to parallel park. I reattached the lock, fixed the chain, and stood there a while, watching the sun rise over the field. It wasn't anger anymore, not really. It was calculation. Karen had forced me into her world of rules and paperwork and silent wars fought behind smiles. So I'd beat her at it. The key to outsmarting people like her is simple. Don't shout, don't fight. Just make the rules work for you. I spent that afternoon driving to the county clerk's office. Most people don't know this, but property rights in rural counties are a labyrinth. Easements, right-of-way disputes, road access permits. All public record. By the time I left, I had everything I needed. Copies of maps, signatures, and legal wording sharp enough to make an HOA lawyer sweat. The next step was all about perception. If Karen believed she was in control, she'd push harder. So I gave her just enough rope to hang her confidence. I took down the gate entirely, dismantled it piece by piece, left the posts standing like broken teeth in the dirt. To anyone passing by, it looked like I'd given up. No lock, no barrier, just an open road. Then I placed a new sign. Clean, laminated, official-looking. It read Notice of Temporary Access Agreement. Authorized personnel only, below that. In smaller print, all vehicle entries subject to remote surveillance and recording under county statute. 12.4, you'd be amazed how people react when they think something's official. Karen. Saw that sign the next morning. I know, because I watched from my porch. Binoculars in hand, coffee in the other. Her SUV slowed. She hesitated, rolled down her window, read the notice. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. She hated that she didn't understand it. Then, just like that, she smiled. That smug, practiced smile. And drove on through. Perfect. What she didn't know was that I'd installed a pressure sensor beneath the dirt, an old trick from my construction days. Nothing fancy. Just a buried plate wired to a solar-powered switch that triggered my camera system. Every time her tires hit that spot, it captured footage and logged the time. I wasn't collecting for the thrill. I was collecting evidence. Over the next week, Karen's pattern returned in full swing. Morning and afternoon, without fail, her SUV rolled through my property like it was part of her driveway. But the thing about patterns is they're predictable, and predictability is weakness. That's when I made my real move. I called the county surveyor's office, not to complain, but to request assistance in verifying boundary markers. I played it humble, polite, a confused landowner trying to make sure his paperwork was up to date. They sent a pair of surveyors out. Orange vests, measuring gear, the works. And wouldn't you know it, they arrived just in time for Karen's morning shortcut. I'll never forget the look on her face when she turned the corner and found them there, standing in the middle of the road with tripods and clipboards. She braked so hard dust shot up like smoke. I watched from the distance, hiding a grin. The younger surveyor stepped forward, calm as you please, and asked her if she had permission to use the access road. Her lips moved, but no sound carried. Then she threw it in reverse, wheels spinning, and peeled off back toward Pine Hollow. That afternoon, I got another call. This time from the HOA office, Mark again. He tried to sound casual, but there was an edge in his tone. The kind that comes from a man caught between his wife's ego and someone else's property line. "Look," he started, "I think we can come to an understanding here. No need to involve the county, right?" I told him there was nothing to involve. I was just confirming my boundaries. He went quiet. I could hear Karen whispering in the background, sharp, insistent. Then he said it. The line that told me exactly how far they'd gone. Karen says the board approved that road years ago. That's when I realized something big. She wasn't just ignoring my property. She was rewriting the story inside Pine Hollow. To her, my land was already part of the HOA myth. Maybe she told the neighbors it was community access. Maybe she even wrote it in some unofficial meeting notes. Whatever the case, I had more leverage than I thought. That night, I went online. Every HOA has a public-facing portal. Announcements, minutes, policy changes. Pine Hollow's was no different. And sure enough, there it was. A new agenda item for next week's meeting. Discussion. Maintenance partnership on Southern Access Road. That's me. My road. My land. She was trying to make it official. I almost admired the boldness. Almost. The next morning, I printed off stills from my trail cams, clear shots of her SUV, timestamps, dates. Then I added a copy of the county surveyor's temporary closure report and stapled them together. I didn't mail them. I hand-delivered them, not to the HOA office, but to every single mailbox on Pine Hollow's main street. No letter, no explanation. Just evidence. People love filling in blanks when you hand them a mystery. By the following afternoon, the neighborhood grapevine was on fire. I heard it from the clerk at the gas station, from the old man who sold hay down the road. Apparently, the HOA board was reviewing serious allegations of misconduct. Some said Karen had tried to seize county land. Others said she'd been secretly charging residents for access she didn't own. I didn't start any of those rumors, but I didn't have to. The truth had enough teeth of its own. A week went by before Pine Hollow stirred again. The gossip had simmered down, the board had gone quiet, and the road through my ranch stayed empty, until the morning I saw a convoy of sedans crawling down the HOA's main lane. 3 cars, hazard lights blinking, all the board members in their Sunday best, heading for the community hall. I knew that look. I'd seen it 1,000 times in union meetings and job sites, people walking into a storm they couldn't dodge. I poured my coffee, leaned against the porch rail, and waited. Sometimes the best revenge is just patience with good timing. By noon, the first email came through. It wasn't from Karen or Mark, but from a neighbor. Someone I barely knew, but who'd apparently had enough of their rulebook politics. The subject line said only, "You should see this." Inside was a link to the Pine Hollow Public Records page. At the very top, a new upload, HOA Board Emergency Meeting Summary. My eyes skimmed the bullet points, and there it was in black and white. The HOA president and vice president have tendered their resignations pending investigation into unauthorized land use agreements. I don't know if I laughed or sighed first. Maybe both. Because as poetic as it felt, it wasn't even my doing. Not directly, anyway. Turns out that when I'd sent those mailbox packets, one of them had landed in the hands of a lawyer who lived 2 streets over, a woman named Sandra Klein. She'd done what lawyers do best, follow the paper trail. Within days, she'd uncovered that Karen had been filing reimbursement claims for road maintenance on land that wasn't HOA property. Every pothole, every bit of gravel she'd bragged about paving, billed back to residents. And when the board saw the evidence, they didn't defend her. They turned on her. Fast. The next morning, the white SUV appeared again. Slower this time, crawling along the edge of the fence line like a ghost that didn't know it wasn't welcome anymore. She didn't drive through. She just stopped. Window rolled down, engine humming soft. I couldn't see her eyes behind the sunglasses, but I could feel the heat of her stare. Maybe she was trying to figure out what she'd lost. Maybe she still thought she could talk her way out of it. I didn't move. I just raised my mug in a quiet salute, then turned and walked back inside. The sound of gravel crunching as she reversed was better than any apology, but here's the funny thing about quiet. Once you finally get it, it feels strange. The next few days passed in stillness. No more phone calls, no more trespassers. The county closed the file, the surveyors signed off the boundaries, and Pine Hollow replaced its entire board. For a while, I kept expecting some new twist, some last act of defiance, but it never came. The emails stopped. The road grew wild again, tufts of grass breaking through the dirt where her tires used to roll. The ranch started to breathe like it was supposed to. I thought that was the end of it, until one Saturday, maybe a month later, I drove into town for supplies. On my way back, I passed through Pine Hollow. I wasn't trespassing. It's a public road until you hit the gate. But it still felt strange, seeing those identical houses all lined up like soldiers. And there, at the center cul-de-sac, was Karen's white SUV, parked, for sale sign stuck in the grass. The curtains drawn. It's strange how fast a little power crumbles once the crowd looks away. That night, as the sun dropped behind the hills, I sat out on the porch again. Same coffee mug, same chair, same view. The gate was rebuilt by then, stronger, cleaner, with fresh hinges that groaned just enough to remind me it was real. I'd left the sign up, too, just for the poetry of it. Authorized personnel only. I smiled every time I saw it. The cameras stayed, not because I needed them anymore, but because they'd become part of the landscape, silent witnesses to how far arrogance will drive someone before it drives them off a cliff of their own making. I never heard from Karen again. Some say she moved out west. Others say she rented the place to a young couple who didn't even know who she was. Pine Hollow changed after that. Less gossip, fewer fines, a little more humanity. I even got a handwritten letter from one of the newer board members thanking me for helping the community recognize its blind spots. I didn't reply. Some lessons don't need thank yous. One evening, near the end of summer, I took a walk down the same road she used to cut across. The sky was low and orange, the air thick with the smell of cut grass and rain on dust. As I reached the gate, I paused, not to look for her, but to remember the version of myself who'd first stood there, coffee in hand, furious at a world that refused to mind its own fences. I realized something then. The trap I built wasn't for her. It was for me. A way to catch my own bitterness before it spread, to prove that you could stand your ground without losing your peace. I turned back toward the house, the wind carrying the soft creak of the rebuilt hinges behind me. In the distance, I could see the lights of Pine Hollow flickering like stars, neat and uniform, every bulb probably approved by a committee. It didn't bother me anymore. Let them have their rules and bylaws. I had sky. I had quiet. And I had a gate that stayed closed when it needed to. Maybe one day someone else will roll up that road and think it's just a shortcut. But if they do, they'll see the sign, the fresh wood, the stillness of a place that doesn't forget. And if they're smart, they'll turn around, because there's nothing more dangerous to the Karens of the world than a man who's finally learned to let silence do the talking.